Hi, counselors. Thanks for tuning in for video 3 of these tips on how to deliver effective essay workshops, because we love them, as you probably know already. So this video is all about how do you create a space for psychological safety. And there are some practical things that we do in order to do this. And why is this important? Well, I find that if students feel safe to dig deep and figure out different parts of themselves, then they're more likely to find topics that are more interesting and more personal for this personal statement. So one of the first things that I think is super important in an essay workshop is to make sure that you're getting consent, and not just at the start of the workshop, but throughout. So what does this look like practically speaking? Let's say you're getting ready to invite students into an exercise. I think it's important to offer options. So for example, you say, okay, in a minute, we're going to get into pairs and we're going to be sharing a little bit about what came up for us in the last exercise. But we're going to do this for 10 minutes. And I want to give you 3 options. Option 1 is you can split the time 5 minutes each. Option 2 is you could just say, you know what, I don't know that I'm necessarily wanting to do this work or this exercise. That's totally fine. And you could say, we can spend 10 minutes on your essay, and your partner might be like, sweet, I get extra time. Option 3 is if both of you aren't feeling comfortable talking about the content that came up for you in the last exercise, you could decide to talk about something else, but please make it college related. So let's say maybe you want to talk about developing your college list, what schools you're applying to. Or maybe you want to talk about supplemental essays that you're working on. And of course, they would need to know what those are. But giving them options and really normalizing that it's okay not to participate in every single exercise 110%. The second thing that I recommend is what I call scaffolding the vulnerability moments. So there are moments in essay workshops where we're asking students to go deep. Let's say, for example, a student is, you've guided them through the feelings and needs exercise. And this is an exercise that involves inviting students to think about challenges that they've faced and how they've impacted them in their lives. Well, I rarely ever, if ever, start with that particular exercise. Oftentimes what we'll do is we'll start with something that's like on a scale of 1 to 10, like level 2 vulnerable, like the I love or I know exercise. And then maybe 20 minutes later, we'll do another exercise where they'll be sharing with a partner about what's one thing that's really meaningful to you, or if you really knew me, what would you know about me? And then maybe later in the exercise, once they've sort of gotten comfortable, particularly with a partner, and I like to kind of partner students up with one another, the same partners throughout, because then they can kind of get comfortable, and then inviting them into the exercises that are going to ask for a little bit more vulnerability. So just carefully going, okay, how do we scaffold these so that we're kind of guiding students into this? A third thing that I really love to encourage is offering personal examples for the exercises. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's say you're guiding students through an exercise where they're answering the question stem. If you really knew me, you would know blank. What I love to do is model this for them. So I might say, for example, if you really knew me, you would know that one of the things that I really struggle with, and this is me, Ethan, talking, is work-life balance. Because I love, love, love what I do. And I love working with students. And I love, making a difference and feeling like I'm helping others. The problem is sometimes that creeps into my nights and weekends. And I don't always have great boundaries, if I'm really honest. So that'd be an example of giving a personal example of something that if you really knew me, something that's true for me. And I think that this can be really helpful for students because when they see a facilitator or someone who is in a position of power being vulnerable, and then there's like this moment where I think that when we pause after sharing something vulnerable and everyone witnesses that that person didn't get laughed at or didn't, whatever we think is going to happen bad to the person, disintegrate or melt, that it sends a message that it's okay for students to, as we like to say, go out on the skinny limb. So I encourage you to go out on the skinny limb, bounce up and down a few times and let them know, hey, it's okay to do this. I'm not talking about sharing your deepest, darkest secrets or your issues that you're having with your spouse. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in that sort of 5 to 7 range. What's something that would feel good to you, to give an example and sort of set the tone for the kind of personal work that we're doing in this process. A fourth tip I want to give is when asking students to engage with one another, limiting what's possible in that scenario. So what do I mean by this? I'm talking about putting guardrails on those interactions. So instead of saying, for example, to students, all right, you're going to pair up and just give each other feedback. Like that's so broad and it could go in so many different directions. Instead, saying, for example, okay, we just did this if you really knew me exercise. Here's what we're going to do. we're going to get into pairs. And what I want you to do is partner A, I want you to share whatever feels comfortable sharing with your partner in terms of what came up for you in this last exercise. Partner B, your job is to just listen. You don't have to do anything else. You're just going to listen. I don't want you to give advice. I don't want you to say anything. Just listen. Okay? That's it. What that might do for students is like, okay, now I have a sense of what I'm about to do in this interaction. And it gives me a sense of like, okay, I can maybe engage in this. And it helps them to sort of hopefully set them at ease a little bit. But being really specific with what the ask is, especially for paired partner work. All right, I hope you found these tips useful. If you're interested in having College Essay Guy, having our team come in and do a workshop at your school, we'd super love to partner with you. Reach out. I'll put a link below this video and you can connect with us. We'd love to support you. We've got all kinds of different ways that we partner with schools, whether it's one workshop, a whole series, a whole boot camp. So we'd love to connect. Thanks again, and thanks for being in community with us.